Welcome to Intune Training, the Graph Show. Today we will take a look at how Sean uses Graph in his Power Apps. Sean, take it away.
Oh, thank you for that lovely intro, Jóhannes. You and your eyes.
I'm keeping an eye on you.
I can tell. Yeah, so I thought today, guys, since we're just jumping into the new season, that we would start off on a slightly different note, and we'll kind of jump through and take a look at what's possible. I know both of you sat there anxiously listening to every word I've said at MMS last year when I went through Power Apps and Power Automate a little bit. And so I thought today, just kind of as a warm up to the season before we get too in depth, that maybe it'd be kind of fun to jump through that and take a look at that. So
back then I didn't understand half of it, but now I do.
I'll pretend that I was there.
Yeah.
So if you understood half of it back then, that also means you didn't understand half of it. So does that mean you understand the half now, that you've got no new understanding?
But basically, yes.
Yeah.
Well, does this kind of fall under that like low code scenario we're talking about, Sean? Or
it does, and actually, I love that you said low code, because to do this demo today, I kind of had to take some stuff out. So I'm going to gloss over some of the code parts, but you will see a few things that are definitely more than no code. But this is just to kind of set the stage here. What we're looking at is basically, I started out with the premise of I wanted to be able to build basically a quick little application that could be used from a cell phone to be able to take actions on mobile devices through Intune. So what this app is designed to do is find a user, return their devices, and then take actions on their device. So it's pretty simple. I guess we can start with a quick demo if you want to go ahead and
yeah, let's pop in there. I know I've personally not used Power Apps very often. Power Automate every once in a while, so this will be interesting.
Yeah, and actually, just kind of on that note, again, this is about the art of the possible, and so I know that we've talked about different scripts and things in the past, and there's lots of different ways to accomplish tasks. This is really about the art of what's possible. I've already taken, and if you follow my blog, I've already shared a lot of this out there. In fact, I believe this entire app is already available in my GitHub. But this is just a great starting off point. I think a good place to show how we can leverage Microsoft Graph in some different ways. So with this app, all it's really doing is it's using a people picker, essentially, where I can come in, start typing a name, and it's going to search for anyone with a name similar to what's in the search. We'll return a list of mobile devices. Here you can see I've got a couple different devices available, an iPad and an Android. I could take a whole list of actions, things wiping, deleting, resetting the password, forcing a sync. But because I don't actually want to break anything, we're just going to go ahead and...
So you don't like having fun is what I'm hearing.
I do, but since I'm going to have to do this later again in this demo or in this session, I don't want to delete it now because I don't want to have to, rejoin the device, because
fair.
I can sometimes take too long to do things. With that being said, so here you can see my lovely Android phone. We're going to go ahead and hit the notify button over here and then come back, and we should see. Look at that. Ben is a wiggle.
Ooh,
so in this case,
just wiggle.
Pretty quick. We just went ahead and sent a notification. Now, through the magic of TV, I'm going to come over here and we're actually going to edit a different version of this app. And that is going to be this one, this Graph 101 Intune mobile admin version. And I don't already have it open. So we'll start off by just going ahead and opening the actual app, just so you can actually, we're going to edit the app. Show you some magic loading screens, because I'm sure nobody has ever seen one of those.
Not at Intune.
And we've got a whole bunch of red. So what does this red really mean here? In this case, what we're actually looking at is these are different screen elements that should be using details that are being returned from Power Apps. Like, for example, if I were to click on this one, edit the formula, you'll see that it's looking for something called flow results using this flow called get mobile devices by UPN. Well, obviously in this case, we don't have that flow available because I've actually removed all of my flows. So we'll go ahead and hit add flow. We'll find our lovely graph 101 we're looking for.
Now, Sean, I'm going to kind of interject here. I'm going to guess that these flows that we're adding aren't just native to Power Apps or Power Automate, right? We got to probably make those.
Correct. So these are all flows that I've already created. So in this case, we've got this version of get mobile devices by UPN, which I've already taken the liberty of coming in here. See, this is me doing magic things. Okay, so I've already got it open over here, actually. Get mobile devices by UPN. You'll see basically what we've got is we've got a Power Apps step. This is actually telling it, hey, this app's going to be launched by Power Apps. And you'll see it says there's no additional information needed. That's because what it's essentially doing is saying Power Apps is calling this. It's actually going to pass in, and we see this. We see this right here where it's saying we're creating a collection called flow results. We're going to go ahead and run this get mobile devices by UPN, and we're going to pass in text user.text. So this text box text field actually is the input to the flow, and that's what's coming in with the with this Power App step. So what it's actually taking that is it's taking that information and it's creating a variable called user principal name, and it's going to go ahead and take that user principal name that came in from the flow itself. There's actually a second variable that we'll be using here in a second called HTTP filter. In this case, because we're going to be making an HTTP request, we want to go ahead and return, or we're basically going to make a request to graph.microsoft.com, and we're actually going to have a filter on the end that's going to filter out any Windows devices, because we really only want to see our users' Windows devices, or sorry, their mobile devices, not their Windows devices. And then from there, you'll see that we've got a couple other steps. These two steps are actually Azure Key Vault steps, where I'm getting the client secret and client ID for this app. There are a lot of different ways to authenticate. Our dear friend, the Wiggle Mr. Ben, is going to be joining us later on this season to go ahead and talk a little bit more about authentication into Microsoft Graph. And that's going to kind of play into what we're dealing here. And you'll see eventually we're sending a response back. So obviously we've got to take the starting information and get back to the response. So anyone want to hazard a guess what we're going to do here?
I'd imagine we'd have to do our actual get requests, because right now all we've got is a couple variables. Yeah,
that is a great answer. Wow, I can really talk today. Give me a day off and I can't talk at all. Okay, so yep, we're going to use an HTTP step here, which in this case the HTTP operation is a premium operation, but it really is just kind of a great thing if you're working with APIs. There are a few other options, but for simplicity, I like using these.
I think the last time I looked, that's what, like $15 USD a month for a user or something like that.
Something like that, roughly. I haven't looked too closely at the pricing, but that's
pretty inexpensive. I mean, at the end of the day, like for some of the stuff that you might be trying to do.
Yeah, and there have been a lot of changes over the course of the last even 6 months to a year around governance, around licensing. Who needs to be licensed to do what? You know, being able to essentially publish flows or publish apps that people can access if they're not licensed. And I'm probably already murdering it enough as is. But yeah, there are a few different options. But yeah, there is a base per user license, which is probably in something like this where you're creating an admin app, probably more of what you would be doing, just licensing the people who need it. But in this case, we're going to go ahead and do a GET request, which is going to sound really familiar to all of our other requests we're already used to. I bet you guys can't guess the website that we're going to call.
Learn.microsoft. What, Jóhannes?
Contoso.com.
Yes. All right, so let me open up my cheat sheet here real quick just to make it go a little bit easier. Obviously, I was very, very, very prepared.
I bet it's the Apple MDM API that we're calling, yeah?
It definitely is. Fun note on that, though. We literally could call any public API or any public address. So that is an option if you did have other APIs you wanted to work with.
Well, it doesn't even necessarily need to be public in a sense, at least from an authentication standpoint, if we can include the client secret and ID, yeah? Or however we want to authenticate to it.
Well, exactly. Yep. When I said, sorry, public was the wrong way of saying it. Any accessible API. How's that?
I like it.
Yeah, that sounds better. So through the magic of copy and paste, you'll see that I just popped in the address here, and it should look really familiar. So our URI starts with simply graph.microsoft.com. We're going to return the version to endpoint here, and you'll see right here we're using that variable of the user principal name. So in this case, we're going to get the user's object from Microsoft Graph, just like we talked about before. And from there, we're going to return managed devices. We're going to select the device name, operating system ID, and then we are going to filter it by the HTTP filter response we had up above. So most of this should look really familiar with what we talked about last season.
And that's you're getting all those from the dynamic content that's listed there on the right. You're right.
And actually, because I'm copying and pasting, that's a good point. Sometimes when you're copying and pasting, you need to go ahead and refill these. So what I'm actually going to do, to your point, so I've got the dynamic content here. I just removed the user principal name that was in there. We're going to go ahead and select that and hit that again. And then we will do the same here for HTTP filter. But that is a really quick way that you can take that information from within your flow. And you'll see that here kind of in the next couple of steps, because there are 2 other steps we'll have to add in. And those are going to show up inside of here.
That is really slick, I think, as the kids say.
Isn't it, though? So now we've got this other information in here, though, and that's that we need to be able to authenticate. And this is actually one of the areas that trips a lot of people up when they're using these HTTP requests the first time, is you still need to be able to authenticate. In this case, we're going to go ahead and use Active Directory OAuth, our authority. And a lot of this is going to look familiar from what we saw, again, in our first season. We're going to use login.windows.net as our authority. We're going to use our tenant name. So in this case, this is using my blog tenant, which is modernendpoint.dev. We're going to use our audience, which is just graph.microsoft.com. And then for our client ID, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and use the value of our client ID that we returned up above. Credential type, we're going to use a secret, and we're going to end up using the value of our client secret that we returned up above. So at this point, this will actually be able to go ahead and get that information and return it. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to go ahead and hit test here. We're going to manually test it. It's going to ask me for my user principal name. On the flow. And we should have the option here to go to our flow runs page in a second. And what I really want to look at here is this HTTP step here. And you'll see that I've got the same information we had before. So we've got an output. Our status code is 200. And you can see I've got this information here where I'm returning my iPad and my, actually also returning my Android device as well. I'm actually going to go ahead and copy this body here. We're going to go back and edit the flow again. And the reason we're going to do that is now we've got to go ahead and take that information we got back, and we've got to make it usable, essentially. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a Parse JSON step and hit generate from sample. And in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and paste in here the JSON body that we got back the last time. We'll hit done. We should see here that it's essentially created a schema that's going to show us that we've got an object. Inside of that object, we'll have an array. And inside of that, we'll have different objects, which are going to include our device name, our operating system, and our ID. Our content here, what we're actually going to do is this is going to be the body from the HTTP request. And then we're going to go ahead and create another step. And this one's just going to be called a select statement. So what we're going to do is this one is using that same sort of data operation. But this one is literally just called a select step. From is going to be essentially the value that we're returning from our parse JSON step. And then we're just going to take the information that we're getting from there. In this case, we know it's going to be our device name.
I will say this, Sean, you sold me the second I realized I didn't have to make my own JSON formatting, and then it would do it for me.
Isn't that great? Now, if you start getting a little bit more, fancy, or if you're returning values that may sometimes be null, you do have to be a little bit more careful to make sure that when you're creating these parse JSON steps that everything lines up. And I'll say that is one of the trip ups that when you're doing this is if you're using something that is a lot more complex, that's one of the things that can kind of bite you a little bit. But so yeah, in this case, you'll see that we've added in that information essentially for our response. And so we can actually change our status code. So based off of like we had like an if-then statement, we could actually return different status codes to the app if we wanted to. Our body here is actually just going to be the output of the previous step. And you'll see that it already has even filled out this information for us. So we're just going to stick with that real quick, and we're just going to go ahead and we'll do a real quick test again. We can automatically run it with a recently used trigger. Hit test. And when it's a little bit longer, you'll see that it does kind of come back and gives a series of green checkboxes. You know, we got our HTTP request. You know, it's got our different devices in it. We can see that it parsed the JSON, it returned the information, and then our select statement went ahead and gave us an output that will be usable by the response. So with that being said, now we can go back to our original Power App here. So in this case, we know that it was the flow results of get mobile devices by upn.run. We're going to change this slightly because obviously we're using a slightly different name. So we're just going to cheat. And of course, it's not liking me cheating that much. I'm going to not cheat quite that much. We're going to do run, and here it wants our different arguments. I'm going to cheat slightly. And this is where Jake, by the magic of editing, can make this a little bit less awkward, or not, because he finds it really funny to watch.
We're all human, Sean, at the end of the day.
I think, if nothing else, this shows that this is a low-code solution, not a no-code solution.
Exactly.
So you need to type in some stuff.
Exactly.
Additionally.
So in this case, what it's specifically looking for is it's looking for essentially the information that we're going to be passing in here. And so
All I know is I see function to the left of that, and I think of Excel, and I have nightmares. But
it is a lot like Excel. In fact, that's a really good way to put it. Is that this is a lot like an Excel function, because that is probably the closest thing I've seen to it. So in this case, though, what it was looking for is it was looking for essentially the information that we were returning. So in this case, it is the text box value of this one, of this specific text box. So if we were to come over here, we can see all of the different properties. We've got the you'll see we can kind of go down through here, and it will show us the different properties that are available. Let's see. Actually, right here, we should be able to see it. Oh, I lied. You can take this part out where I'm just trying to.
We like watching you suffer.
Yeah.
it's not like we're configuring hybrid key trusts.
No, not quite.
Not quite. So, user, txt user. So text is going to be the value, the text value of this field once there's a value in there. And that's going to be filled, obviously, when we go ahead and do our search here. So, for example, we can actually preview the app here. And so if we did our search, it get mobile devices, and now it's going out and making the request. But we're not doing anything with the request yet. And so, hey, look, it did actually pop it in. So in this case, there were two other fields here that were looking for that response. And so those did pop back in. But now you'll notice that there's really nothing. So if I were to click on one of these, oh, it does still have the actions in there. If I were to go ahead and try and do this, though, it doesn't do anything. And that's the reason it's not doing anything, is because that's one of the other things we removed. And so obviously, if we look in here, again, there needs to be additional flows added in. So in this case, that one is actually going to be the notify field. So we'll find that specific app. And you'll notice that is still kind of showing as broken. So let's go ahead and look at that notifications flow. And the big difference between these at this point is that you'll see this one. It's a lot easier to edit these flows inside of Power Automate. I found that there are some things that don't work as well in here for whatever reason. So in this case, we'll go to our customer notification flows. We'll edit it. And you'll see again, we've got the same general information. So we've got a Power Apps step. It's actually taking the device ID from the Power Apps input. It would also take the message title and message variable. And so we'll go ahead and create, in this case,
I'm guessing another HTTP call to the endpoint that'll actually send the notification.
That would be a great guess.
I think, what am I 2 for 2? I think this is the best
I
record
think
I've ever had.
What's going to be different about this request?
I have peaked. It's all downhill from here.
Oh, yeah.
Come on, Jóhannes. What's going to be different about this request?
Oh, hey, you're the star on the show.
I bet you can figure it out. Not to give you too many hints.
It's gonna be
a post, yeah.
Hey, yeah. This one's going to be
keep in mind, so for the audience watching this and thinking, man, this Jóhannes guy, he doesn't know anything. It's 11 p.m. on my side. These guys are like, they just ate lunch, so it's a bit different.
Well, and let's also be honest. Sometimes when it comes to the methods and what API you're working with, you might think it'd be a post, but it's actually like a patch that they want you to use.
Yeah.
It totally depends on the developer and how they have everything configured.
And it also would have helped if I was a little bit more prepared today and, you know, had everything open. But that's a different story.
That's the Intune training charm.
So, exactly. So if we can go ahead and come over here. Sorry, I'm saying come over here on the monitor that you can't see off to the side. You'll see, again, we're going to be making a request this time to graph.microsoft.com. This time we're hitting the beta endpoint, device management, manage devices, and then we're taking the device ID that, again, we're getting from up here. We'll just go ahead and make sure.
I like how you pointed that out, Sean, because I noticed in the first one you did V1. Is there any reason we did that or just for giggles?
So because I specifically built this several months ago at MMS, I don't remember exactly what it was. It may be that this notification wasn't in the versioned endpoint at that point in time.
Gotcha.
I'm not sure. Or it could have just been, so speaking of not being prepared for sessions, I literally was building this in the 10 minutes leading up to the session, and Doug was ready to smack me because I was continually trying to add things into our session at the last minute. So
what I'm hearing is you pulled it off. I mean, that's all that really matters, right?
I actually think we skipped this step, and I just did the device action in that one. But
we're in bonus content right now. I like it.
Yeah, exactly. So in this case, obviously, when we're dealing with a post request, we already know that that's going to require a body. So in this case, again, it's still just a JSON body. This one, you know, if you wanted to build this out a little bit easier, obviously, if you were to go send a notification from the portal and have the dev tools open, you would be able to just copy the body there. And then in this case, you would be coming in here and changing the value, just like I did here, you know, selecting the title and body variables from the request and making sure that you got them in the right place in the format. So, and then again, we're going to have the same things for authentication, where we're going to go to .net, your tenant, not mine. Audience, and then we're going to do the value for our client ID, and the value for our client secret. And then in this one, all we're actually doing is we are going to send a response, but all we're going to do is we're just going to send the status code back to the app. And I believe I may have it built in, if I didn't, to pop up a success message. But what you can do with those status codes inside of Power Apps is you can say, hey, if this has a status code, pop up the status code in the app. I know that was way too quick of an explanation of how that works, but now we've kind of shown you a little bit both how to do a GET request and how to do a POST request. So we'll save that.
It's all about the art of the possible, right, Sean?
All about the art of the possible. I know it. You sound like someone I know. So if we come back to our demo example here, what we're really looking at, and the one we want to edit, is going to be this one, essentially the notification. So we'll edit this in the formula bar. Again, you'll see that this time what we're actually doing is, again, it was calling the wrong notification. It was calling the run step, and then it was taking these, basically these three things. So the device ID, which was a variable we were setting on the device tab, the text value of the text message title box here, and the text value of the message body. And so it's taking those and it's passing those back into our flow. So again, that first step in the flow, the Power App step, is basically saying, all you're really doing when you're using this step is you're saying, take whatever information is coming in from the app. And so from there, it's basically saying, hey, there's 3 items in here, and I'm going to take those 3 items and I'm going to assign them to these variables. Obviously, if this were Power Apps 101, we would dive in a lot deeper. That was way too quick of an example due to the great fun we had last time of me having to track down the values. I'm going to go ahead and copy that real quick.
I'm sure we can find another channel that kind of covers Power Apps 101 too that we can link in the description down below.
We can probably arrange that. I think there's a few of them out there. We'll go ahead and paste that information in. And now through the magic of TV, again, if we come back out here, let's go ahead and select the right device. Select the right device. And we'll see if I did this right.
Oh, there's an echo.
You're hearing that too. Okay.
Yeah. No, there's 2 of them.
You're hearing 2 echoes?
No, it's never mind. It's a dumb joke.
Oh, I'm with you. Okay. Hey, look, we got our notification. So with that one, obviously there was a 3rd step here. It's just another post request, and that was here on our selected device action. I can kind of cheat and quickly show you what it looks like in an already completed flow because I have it. There's really not that much that's really that different there. Let's see. Again, this one's just going to be a post request. And in this case, the only thing that's really different is we're using the device ID and the action. And so you'll notice that in the Power App itself, the actions are actually the same actions that you would use with the graph endpoint. Again, this has all already been uploaded to my GitHub and is available for download. So you could upload
Oh, Sean, you're bugging up.
That's fun. So, are you losing my audio?
Oh, it echoes really badly.
Why did that suddenly start echoing? Is it any better now?
Keep talking.
Hello, 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 hello. I probably should speak in a way that sounds like it's echoing. Okay, so I don't know why that suddenly bugged out. So let's go back just a second here. So we'll take it back from this point. So here we've got the actual we've got the actual app that I've got running. Sorry, that's the wrong one. Magic of TV, folks. Okay. So here's the right here is the Power Automate workflow that we've got that's actually running that take device action step. And just for the sake of expediency, rather than rebuilding that right now, I'll come in here and I'll just generally show you what that one is doing. That one, again, is just a post request, and it's using the device ID. And the other step it's using is the action. You'll notice in the Power App itself, when you hit the drop down, we've got different actions built in here. These are the same actions that are available inside of the graph endpoint for device actions. So all it's really doing is it's just taking the value of that text field and it's just passing that in as well. Again, this is available inside of my GitHub for downloads. You should be able to go ahead and download it. And then from there, you'd be able to take it and work with this. So thank you once again for joining us today and listening to me ramble on about Power Automate and Power Apps a little bit. I feel like that was moving a little bit slow, and I apologize for that. But that's where I'm going to rely on Jake.
It was fine. Don't worry about it.
We're good.
Don't worry.
No, that was good stuff. I think we'll include all the links down below. Obviously, any questions, comments, concerns, like I mentioned earlier, throw them down in the comments section. But thanks, Sean. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody has any better ways of doing these things, again, throw them in the comments. Hit us up on Twitter. We're all here to learn, and these are things that I built literally last May. And I know there have been a lot of changes and improvements. There's a lot of other things. So if you're doing anything else with Power Apps, Power Automate, or any other low-code tool that you want to share, let us know.
And with that said, goodbye.